What if personal development has become your coping mechanism? And what if doing more personal development, what if listening to more podcasts, what if listening to more motivational speeches on YouTube is doing you more harm than good? I have, for a very, very, very long time, had what I would consider to be an unhealthy obsession with personal development. Because here's what I've learned about personal development is that personal development isn't good for everybody. And here's why. You see, if you know yourself, if you've had what I would consider a very stable upbringing, if you've had a lot of stability in your life, good role models growing up, then personal development for you can be really, really good. However, there's a caveat. If you haven't had great role models growing up, or in my case, as a boy raised without a father, personal development can be very, very unhealthy for you. Here's why. Because a lot of personal development and a lot of what I've found is that a lot of the personal development messages are coming from a person who knows themselves, or at least can perform in a way that would suggest that they do. And that's very attractive to, well, what a boy like me and a young adolescent male like me. Because what I used to do historically is I would gravitate towards mentors, especially elder men or men that I perceived to be more successful than me. And what I didn't realize is that more than wanting their skills, I wanted their sense of self. And what I would do is I would invest in courses, I'd invest in masterminds, I'd invest in mentors, when on reflection, there were maybe perhaps times when maybe perhaps that wasn't what I needed to do. You see, for me, one of the things I've learned about business is, and I had this conversation in a men's group just the other day, is somebody was on the call and he's a life coach, and he was talking about how what frustrates him about being a coach, and he's obviously very new to that, is he said, it frustrates me when I know the answer to what they should do and I really have to bite my tongue to not tell them, but sometimes I just want to tell them what to do. And I said, I admire that, right? Because I have been that coach, that excited little yappy dog coach who wants to tell people what to do. But what I've learned is, firstly, there's a difference between mentors and coaches. Mentors tell you what to do. Coaches, if it's done in the right way, are pure or language purists, and what they do is they ask the questions to help you to find out what's right for you from the inside out, right? Because the challenge is, if you get, as I have done, and this is when I say personal development is bad for you, is if you go and get a mentor, you go and invest, as I've done, thousands in a mastermind group, and you get a mentor and you don't know yourself. The challenge with that is you can achieve everything. You probably will achieve everything the mentor tells you. So that's the upside. But the problem is you're modeling the values of that mentor, and if you don't want what that mentor's achieved, it might not be right for you. For example, Daniel Priestley often talks about you've got to know what kind of level of business you want to get to. Do you want a lifestyle business, or do you want some big global empire? Now, I've come to learn, being married with children, that I want a lifestyle business, and what comes with that is potentially you've got to do more and be more involved, and there's a revenue profit threshold. And what the upside is, you don't have a team and loads of people to manage. The downside is you don't have a team and it's not a big global thing and the impact isn't as big. So you've got to know what level is right for you based on your mental capacity, bandwidth, and also emotional intelligence, etc. So going back to what I was saying about difference between a mentor and a coach, is a mentor will say this is the way, whereas a coach will say find the way from within. And I think both have their place. The challenge is if you get a mentor, and as I have for a very long, I'm 42 years old, probably at the time of doing this video, it's only been the past couple of years that I feel like I've started to really know myself. And if you get a mentor when you don't know yourself, then you'll just do what the mentor tells you, and then you might find that there's inner conflict. And I found inner conflict happens when your values are being pulled, right? And so, for example, the mentor might be telling you to do this because they're building a global empire, but you might not want a global empire, so it might be a conflict. It might be like, hang on a minute, I don't know if I even want that. And that's the problem with getting mentors. That can be the problem with personal development. And that's why I love coaching. Because coaching is less about telling people what to do and it's about first helping people find themselves first. Because most people don't know themselves. And actually, there's nothing wrong with that. A lot of people are scared by that, right? What does Kanye West say? We're all self-conscious. I'm just the first to admit it. Yeah, I love that line. I'm willing to admit I don't really know myself. I'm only starting to know myself now. And even now, I find I contradict myself a lot. And I'm willing to admit that. A lot of people probably aren't even willing to admit that. It's hard to admit that you don't know everything and you haven't got everything figured out and you're making it up as you go along. It takes courage to admit that. So personal development for me has been a coping mechanism, and I think for a lot of people, personal development can be bad and isn't always good. Now, second question I want to ask you is, what if your productivity is actually hiding something deeper? And what if you're being productive because there's an on switch inside of you and you're scared of what will happen if you turn it off? A few years ago, I built a great business. I built a coach training business with an old business partner, and we did really well. Fast growth, 15 months, £500,000 in revenue. We had a team, and then it fizzled out. And the primary reason that it fizzled out was because of me and my mental health, my emotional well-being. I wasn't mentally set up to be a business owner. I didn't have the right skills. I didn't have the right knowledge. I didn't have the right, emotional intelligence. I didn't have the right psychology. Tony Robbins is always talking about how the bottleneck of a business is the owner's psychology. And I didn't have the right psychology, fell out with my business partner, created a lot of conflict, created a lot of problems. And on the surface, that business was really good, but behind the scenes, it was not good. And, you know, I often ask this question on stage, you know, have you ever had a time in your life where on the outside things look great, but on the inside you feel like something's missing? That's how it felt, because on the outside, this business looked great and I'm getting all these messages from friends and saying, you've made it, you've crushed it and all this kind of stuff. But deep down, I was a mess, right? I was not in a good place. I was definitely wearing a mask and pretending that things were great when they really weren't. And I think that's what a lot of people do, is they are very good at being on, but not very good at being off. And as a result of that, I won't call it a breakdown, but if the opposite of breakdown is breakthrough, what came out of that was a lot of really good stuff. What came out of that was a realization that I needed to switch off. And switch off to me used to be, oh, just go on holiday every 8 weeks or whatever. And I've now come to realize that's not what switch off actually means. For me, what switch off means is every day taking time to be with myself in silence. I now meditate several times a day. this morning, an hour before I got up. I'll do that. I'll probably meditate another couple of times today. Maybe not as long as that, but I'll meditate 2 or 3 times today. I'm on stage. I'm speaking in front of 100 people in Oxford, and so for me, being able to go to turn off has really helped my productivity, because now I feel I'm more effective than productive. That sort of term high performance makes me a bit anxious, because I feel that the opposite of high performance, people would say, is low performance. And if you said to somebody, what does low performance mean? They may have negative connotations. A bit like how the word negative, if you say to people, often I hear people say to me, I'm trying to be positive. And I go, why would you try and always be positive? Such a crock of shit. Someone once upon a time decided it would be a great idea to start writing books with the word positive in the title. And what that did is it created a culture of people thinking negative was bad. Now, if you know anything about energy, you'll know that energy relies on positive and negative charge, right? So you need polarity of power to make energy, which is why I say there's a time for high productive and there's a time for low productive. Low productive does not mean me Netflix and chilling. For you, it might be that, right? For me, low performance or low productivity, low efficiency means slowing down. Because if you think about a high performing sports car, whole point of a high performing sports car, you may say, is to drive fast. But what happens if a high performing sports car is in traffic? You're not going to drive fast now, are you? Because if you drive fast, you will crash the car. So the point I'm making here is this. What if productivity is hiding you from something deeper? And what if on the opposite of productivity, what you really need is more time in low performance? People often say to me, Miles, I've tried to meditate, but I couldn't do it. I sat still and my mind wouldn't switch off. And I say, there's a saying, I think, from Jay Shetty that says, forgive me, I'm going to butcher this, but he says something like, I try to meditate. And it's like something like, if I can't meditate, that's why I have to meditate for like 2 hours. I've butchered that quote. But the point he's making is, if you can't sit still, then you have to. Meaning, if you sit for 10 minutes and your mind's racing, you have to stay there until the mind slows down. And eventually it does. The mind in meditation is a lot like a plane rising in altitude. It takes time to get above the clouds. It takes time to get to a place where the white noise is gone. It takes time for that. For me, it's about 20 minutes. For me, sometimes it's half an hour. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, depending on how much time I'm spending in meditation. But the point is, it can take time to get to that point where you have that calmness of mind. Next question that I want to ask today is, what if healing is harder and braver than hustling? Now, for those of you that know my story, you'll know a little bit about me. You'll know, obviously, I do a lot of speaking for a living. You'll know that I had a few years ago a life coach training company, Master Coach. We did £500,000 in 18 months. First 18 months did very good. We had a team and things were seeming like they were trending in the right direction. And then the business crashed and burned. But what was happening behind the scenes is me and Sati, my wife, were starting to argue. There was a lot of conflict. And what seemed like it was great for us on paper was really, really bad for my mental and emotional health. And one of the things that I decided to do is decided to start therapy. And I found that didn't really work for me. So I explored. I was looking at other things that I thought would be right for me. And one of the things a person I'd heard of before is this idea of a men's group. Now, I didn't really know what that was. But when I looked into it, I decided to give a particular men's group a go. Big shout out to Kenny Marmarella de Cruz at Men's Speak. Check out mensspeak.co.uk. And I checked out Men's Speak, which was effectively a place where guys would, and these check-ins run, it's called a check-in, it's for an hour on Zoom every day, 12:30 weekdays and 10:30 weekends. And what happens on a men's group is, and I very quickly fell in love with these groups and I found they were just what I needed, is it's a space for men to just talk about what they feel, like name it as an emotion. Like I would say, like, hey, I'm Miles and right now I'm feeling a tightness in my chest, or hey, I'm Miles and right now I'm feeling a bit sad. And then I would go on to kind of babble about what's up for me, what is maybe creating that sadness or that anxiety in my body. And I have, in the past 3 years, maybe 3 or 4 years, have now sat in probably anything in the region of 500 to 600 hours of men's groups. And I found that sitting in those environments, in those rooms, has been harder than hustling. For me, I found that just doing and getting shit done and being productive is quite easy. But actually sitting with my feelings and being open and transparent about my so-called imperfections has actually been really difficult. And I found I found it to be very cathartic to sit with my emotions and with my feelings. And I've actually found that what was initially harder has now become actually easier, because I've been in about 600 hours of men's groups. So if you're not just a man, but I recommend, if you are a man and you're listening to this, then I highly recommend that you want to check it out. Because another question I'll ask you is, I found that, I ask it as a question, what if a lot of men don't feel safe enough to feel? And what that means is, I find a lot of men, and this is definitely what I can say for me, is I didn't feel safe enough to feel what I really felt with my wife. Because there's a part of me psychologically that was scared that if I reveal my deepest, darkest emotional feelings to my wife, then she would find me unattractive, because vulnerability is fucking scary. And I do find that there's a certain vulnerability threshold that, as a man, that if you cross that with a female, then it can generate sympathy rather than empathy. So what I love about things like men's groups and men's spaces is, for me, it's a space to take my emotions into a safe space, share what I'm really feeling, ground myself, regulate myself, look after my inner child, look after my emotional center in a non-judgmental space with men, which actually helps to create alignment within myself, so that then I find then I can go back out into the world, and especially in the world as with my wife and with my kids, and I can come from a more coherent, grounded place. And I've noticed in my marriage with my wife, with Sati, that there's a direct correlation to how connected we are, how intimate we are, how aligned we are, with how much time I spend in these safe spaces with men. The less time I spend in the men's space with men, the needier I get, the more I need her to help me with my emotions and with my feelings. And that's not to say, because you may be hearing this thinking, so are you saying I shouldn't share what I feel with my wife? No, that's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying what you might want to do, the way that women are really good, stereotypically, at sharing what they feel with other women, is you might perhaps want to spend some time sharing space with men, so that you can start to feel what you feel with men. And then you'll find that when you're with women, if you're in a kind of stereotypical male-female relationship, you'll find that the way that you relate to them and the way that they relate to you is more coherent, more grounded, and you'll find that the marriage will probably be better, the communication will be better, because there won't be so much unspoken, unmet needs. And it also means that you, the masculine male, are in a much better space to meet your partner where they're at and hold them and their feminine energy and their hormones and stuff, because you're regulated, because you've worked on yourself. So I hope you found that useful. And again, you know, as always, with I say with these videos, if you've enjoyed it, comment, share, like, definitely share. If you find that there's somebody that you know that would feel benefit to this, tag them in it, whatever you need to do.